All right. I know I said we would start with Chapter 2, the Walking Through Spartan tutorial. We're actually going to back up to Chapter 1. This will be tutorial number 1, Chapter 1, Operating Spartan. This is a brief tour through the menus in Spartan 24. A more guided tour is provided in the manual under Section 5, which is, I think, called Features and Functions, which basically tours each menu in detail. And let me just remind everyone, the manual is located in the upper right corner under the Help menu, and it's the second entry down, Spartan 24 manual. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few things I've neglected to mention in Tutorial 0. Firstly, how do you open Spartan 24? If you're on a Windows machine, I'm going to demonstrate that. If you're on a Macintosh machine or a Linux box, let me just describe that. For Mac users, you should go to the Finder, and the Finder is the smiley face icon. You'll find it in the toolbar, sort of at the bottom of your Mac. Go to the Finder, go to Applications, and that's organized alphabetically. So you'll find Spartan 24 there. If you are a Linux user, just open a terminal and type Spartan 24. No caps, no spaces, no apostrophe, just Spartan 24 and return, and that will open the graphical user interface. And if you're a Windows user, which is what I am doing here, and I'll show you. I'm not gonna show you my desktop, but there is a desktop shortcut. It looks here. Let me zoom in. Looks sort of like this. This gets installed when you install the application. You can also go to the start menu in the lower left corner of the any Windows, at least Microsoft Windows 10 or 11. You'll have a little type-in screen, and you can type Spartan 24. And you can access that way. Okay, so assuming everybody can get to Spartan 24 and has the application open, let me just remind everyone that the manual is located in the Help menu. It's the second entry down. It's called the Spartan 24 manual. And we are currently on page 39. This is Chapter 1. Let me just show you the table of contents quickly. So we're here, Operating Spartan, page 39. A full detailed walkthrough of the menus is included in Section 5. That's on page 244. But we're going to jump in over here. Okay, and I'm going to veer off course. I've already covered the sort of the Help menu, the Options menu, and the Activities menu in the previous tutorial. So from Chapter 1, for Tutorial 1, what I want to primarily focus on is just the File menu. And I will cover the other menus, just show you where things are located. This is essentially to show everyone where items are located, not to demonstrate functionality. That will come in subsequent tutorials. But with regard to the File menu, there are really three ways you can get things into Spartan. You can either begin to build in 2D, or begin to build in 3D, or you can open some other previous file, and that could be a previous Spartan file or some other file format. So that's all going to come to you. That will all be accessed from the File menu. So that's primarily what we'll cover from this point forward. So I'm going to sort of push the Chapter 1 information off screen, and from this point forward we're going to focus on the File menu. Okay, so with Spartan 24 open on screen, let's open the File menu located in the upper left corner of the interface. And there are just a few entry points at this point. There are a set of options, including New Build in the upper left, New Build. New Build will open a set of builders in 3D. There's New Sketch to the right of that. New Sketch will open a 2D building palette. And then there's Open, which will get one to the file system. Also underneath that, Open Recent Documents will return to the file system with a bit of a memory of history. And then there's an Access PDB Online. Spartan is not a big molecule protein code, but if we do have some tools to build nucleotides and peptides, at least on a sequence basis. But if you really want to do anything big molecule, you probably want to access things in a PDB format, and you can do that from this location using a PDB ID. You can also, of course, open a PDB file in Spartan. Okay, so let's go ahead and open, just to demonstrate, the new build, which will get us to building in a 3D mode. This will open a set of builders on the right-hand side. It's a model kit. You'll drop into the organic palette. Let me just show you what the 2D sketch part looks like. Both of these are demonstrated in specific chapters going forward, so I'm not going into a huge amount of detail, but I just want to show you where things are located. And for purposes of this tutorial, because we want to primarily highlight the file menu and using this as a tool to build up a sets of Spartan files, let me go ahead and demonstrate building, but don't pay too much attention to this as a building tutorial. Just this is a general demo purposes only. What I'm going to do is let's build methane, which just is a double click. By default, the sp3 carbon is highlighted on the right hand side of the screen, and a double click entry is how one builds. And we're in build mode. Let me just zoom in. I'm using the center mouse wheel to zoom in. All of the open valences are at this point sort of displayed as yellow sort of open valences. If we go into the view mode, which you enter under the glasses icon, the view mode, those will automatically be filled with hydrogens. Okay, so we've built a molecule. This is methane. Spartan can certainly operate on methane as an individual molecule, but we can treat a Spartan document as a multi-molecule file. So if I return to the file menu, I can go now to a new item, which is called Build New Molecule. This means essentially, let's add a new molecule to the existing document. So again, we'd start out with a sort of a blank palette. The organic tab is highlighted in the model kit. And I'll go ahead and build ethane. And then just let me repeat and do build new molecule. And we'll build propane. Okay. And I now have a multi-molecule document, and if I enter the view mode again by clicking on the glasses, you'll see in the lower left corner you can click the space advances to move through the items in the list. You can of course also go to the spreadsheet. This is typically displayed as a permanent icon in the toolbar. It's also located under the display menu spreadsheet. And at this point, we just call these items molecule 1, 2, and 3. We've done nothing further with them. Let me just for convenience sake relabel these. What I've done is I've right-clicked on label in the upper left corner of the spreadsheet, and I'm going to choose rename selected molecules using SSPD. And this is just going to use our little database, which is about, 315,000 molecules. We certainly know about these 3, and we'll rename this for you based on those entries. Just renaming things. We haven't done anything with the structure at all. Okay, so we now have a multi-molecule list. So methane, ethane, propane. Okay, and let's go ahead and do one additional piece. If I wanted to add to this list, I could certainly go back to the file menu and go build new molecule. But an additional way might be to append molecules. And what this does is it's a shortcut to the file system. So essentially anything that's been saved before is available. And for demonstration purposes, I'll show you what I've done. Let's go to append molecules. And I'm now looking at a location on my machine where I've saved previous files. And in our current file, we have methane, we have ethane, we have propane. Let me go ahead and append butane and say, okay. So now what does that do? Okay, so I had a previous file where I had butane in it, and I've now added it to this list file. So this new Spartan document now has 4 molecules in it. And I can get to the append feature from the file menu append. You can also get to the append feature from the spreadsheet. If you right click on an empty cell, you have the option to do the same thing. So you can do append molecules. This is just a shortcut to the file menu. Before I demonstrated appending butane, let me look and notice here that there's also pentane and hexane, and point out that you can also append multiple molecules at a time, or multiple documents at a time. So I'm going to hold the control key down to multi-select in pentane and hexane. So I have 2 items selected, and I'll say okay, open, and that will add these to the list. It shuffled their order. That's okay. We can sort that later. And let me point to one other piece as well. This is now a multi-molecule list. If I had a previous multi-molecule list, I can do the same thing. I can go to append molecules, go to the file menu, and in this case I have, let's say, heptane and octane and nonane, etc., and decane. So I'm gonna 7 through 10ane. I can open. All right, so those will be dropped down into this list. Okay, so now I built up a list of essentially methane through decane. And I'll point to one additional piece. We have the ability to essentially add any format or file type. I have an additional file that's a .spartan file. It could have been an SDF file or some other format, but it happens to be a bunch of different isomers of decane. Okay, so if I go now to append either from the spreadsheet, or again also from the file menu, append molecules, I can point to this decane isomer list, and I think it was something like 64. I can't remember the number that there were. Okay, so those will all now be added to this document. Okay, so there are ways to build up multi-molecule files. Of course, the easiest, if you have a pre-existing SDF format file or something along those lines, we can open that and we'll be able to read that in, including the metadata should go into our spreadsheet. But these are ways you can generate files just using the file menu. And there are really, again, 3 ways to jump into Spartan. You either need to build in 3D, build in 2D, or open a pre-existing file. Okay, so this is information about the file menu. Let's move on and take a look at the remainder of the menus in just a small amount of detail. Okay, we'll try and use this molecule, this list file, as an example, and keep this open for the remainder of the tour through the menus. And I'll try and keep the remainder brief, as this is available in Chapter 1 of the manual. Again, that's available under the Help menu in the upper right corner of the interface, and the Spartan 24 manual is the second entry down. This essentially walks through each of the menus and gives at least a brief description. I won't even go into this level of detail. I just primarily want to show you where things are. Okay, so I want to go back to the file menu and demonstrate the Save As utility, but before I do that, I'd like to do one other piece. Let's just go back into the spreadsheet, and I just want to demonstrate something quickly. We'll do a little cleanup. I'm using the slider bar to move to the top of the spreadsheet, and I built this list file, partly by hand, partly by appending. And there was a question of ordering. I think earlier I had, let's see, pentane and heptane and how are these things that are things got a little bit out of order. So essentially, I just want to demonstrate the way you move things around in a spreadsheet. You can just left click to select it, and then if you hold the left mouse button down, you can drag it around. So if you need to reorder things, it's very easy to just grab something and move it around. The second comment is, as I was appending it, I ended up with 2 copies of the molecule decane. And Spartan recognized that and essentially put a little bracketed number 1 around it, around one of them, just so we could know which one we're referring to. So I'm going to delete the second entry, and I just point out there's a delete entry at the bottom of the spreadsheet as well. Okay, and with that, what we'll do is I'll go ahead and save this, and let me just demonstrate the file. Save as, file menu in the upper left, save as, and I'll call this tutorial 1. But really what I want to demonstrate are the file types that are available. Ooh. Actually, that's probably difficult to see. Hold on, let me save this, and then let me see if I can do something really quick. Give me just 1 sec. Okay, done this right. Okay, I tried to do it. It's not that much better actually. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this any better or not. But this is a screen capture of the drop-down menu of the Save As option. So for a multi-molecule file format, I'd probably recommend the either the Civil Mol2 format, or we more often will probably use an SDF format, so the MDL SDF format. XYZ is also available, and JMOL XYZ list are also, those are 2 list file options as well. Anyway, there are a bunch of different Save As options, and it's not really necessary that you see them all. It's just necessary that you know that they're available. And if you have questions on that, you can certainly reach out. Okay, so we've saved this as tutorial 1, and let's go ahead and work through the edit menu. The edit menu is essentially what you would expect would be available in I think any sort of text editing program. It's got your select, your undo, edit, cut, copy, paste features. And these are actually, most of these anyway, are also included in a right-click contextual menu. So at least the select and cut, copy, paste are available if you just right-click. The only other piece to mention, I think that's unique, is maybe the center, and that is if you move something way over to the side of the screen, there's just a little utility that will center things on screen. Okay. The model menu has 2 items that I'd like to highlight, and the remaining items you can take a look at, and we'll cover actually in subsequent tutorials, but I do want to cover global and coupled. So by default, global should be on, and depending on the state of a list file, coupled can be on or off. Global means essentially apply the settings for the model style to the entire list. So we're in ball and spoke, and everything in my list file is in ball and spoke. If I switch to, because we're in global, if I switch to tube, if I move through the list, everything in the list file went to tube. Okay? And if the opposite of that, I guess, would be if we're in the model menu, and let me go back to ball and spoke, and I'll turn global off. Sorry, the menu goes away every time I click. I apologize. So with global off, if I switch to tube now, the tube change is only applicable to the methane molecule, to whatever member of the list was available. So everything else would stay ball and spoke, but the first molecule in the list, methane in this case, would switch to tube. Okay, so by default, global is typically on. I just want to point that out. There is the option to move things around. Let me talk quickly about coupled. Coupled essentially is somewhat related. It applies to mouse movements, to movements on screen. So by default, with coupled on, mouse movements are applicable to everything in the list. So if I move this molecule to the lower right corner of the list, everything else in the list will be in the lower right corner. Okay? and that's because we have coupled on. So let me go to the edit menu and center, and let me make everything ball and spoke. Let me go back to the beginning, go back to methane. Okay, and then let me just demonstrate with coupled off and why one might want to do that. In addition to displaying one molecule at a time, if I open the spreadsheet again, I can display multiple molecules. So let me just turn the first three members of the list on: methane, ethane, and propane. And you can see by default they're all on top of one another. I just asked for them to be centered a moment ago, so that sort of makes sense. But also here's a negative. I'm going to close the spreadsheet. This isn't very convenient. The mouse manipulations are applied to everything, so I can't separate them. Okay, this is coupled. Okay, so there are times when you do want things to be coupled, but there may be times when you want them decoupled. And so you simply go to the coupled item and just toggle that off. And then you can go to, say, the first member of the list. And if I want to move methane to the right, let's say we want to keep ethane in the middle, move propane over to the right-hand side. Okay, whatever. Methane, ethane, and propane. So left, center, right. And then maybe if you get the orientation that you want on screen, now would be a time that you would go back and say, you know what, now I want things coupled. So if I move anything now from this point on, at least I've got separation and I can see these three. Okay, so three members displayed now with coupled on. The mouse manipulations actually apply to all members of the list. Okay, just a small distinction, but worth pointing out for the model menu. I won't go into a huge amount of detail with regard to the geometry menu, but let me just open that up quickly and we'll talk about that in just one moment. Okay, the geometry menu contains actually a pretty hefty number of features. This includes measuring, modifying, and constraining distances, angles, and dihedrals. Also tools like freezing things. It includes conformational analysis tools like setting torsions and identifying where a molecule will be searched with regard to systematic generation of systematic conformers and conformational searching. And then some more advanced items like generating isomers and tautomers. In any event, most of this stuff is demonstrated in subsequent tutorials. Again, I won't get into a huge amount of detail, just to let you know where these are located. Also a tool called Align to align molecules in a list. And let me just go at this point and turn off the multiple display that we have so it doesn't get too confusing. Okay, we'll just leave that thing on screen. Okay, and then we'll go to the build menu. This contains building functions, and this by default we're typically in the view mode, which is a neutral mode. But if you're constructing molecules, you're either doing that in a 3D space, which is the edit build, or you're in a 2D space, which is the edit sketch. And the other items refer to tools associated with building as well. Guest transition state refers to a tool set that allows you to build up a transition state using arrow pushing nomenclature. And then there's a minimize tool. The minimize icon is also typically available at the top of the screen in the icon bar at the top. This is also available always in the 3D build mode at the bottom of all of the builders. And that's just a shortcut to the molecular mechanics MMFF 94. And what we'll do is just a quick geometry optimization and clean things up. I'll give you a quick demonstration of that. It may be a little bit hard to see, but we'll just go to the end so it's something a little bit bigger so more things will move. So I just moved to the end of the list file, and then I'm just going to click this minimize button and sort of let you see what happens. Hey, the structure changed just very subtly. How can I tell? Well, I can do an undo operation and see it change, and then I can press the button again, and I also see at the lower right of the corner there's a strain energy that's reported. So I can do a quick minimization from the build menu and also from the minimize icon. Okay, the setup menu is essentially a entry point to either setting up surfaces or an entry point to the calculations dialog. The calculations dialog is where all of the calculations are set up, and there's a whole host of options and customization from this location, and these will be covered in subsequent tutorials. Okay, the only other item in the setup menu is submit. And of course, pressing submit will submit to the back ends whatever calculation the calculation dialog has set up. Okay, so we'll go back to the neutral mode, the view mode, and we've looked at the build menu, looked at the setup menu. The display menu, very briefly, is access to a number of different dialogues and plotting routines. We can access calculated surfaces, calculated spectra are plotted from here, custom plots from data in the spreadsheet. There's a reactions dialog. All of this is covered in additional tutorials, so I won't go into much detail. I will just quickly click on this item called Dual. Since we're in a 3D mode, if I click Dual, I'll get a 2D display of this molecule. Were we in the sketch mode, if I click Dual, it'll give a little 3D rendering. Okay, so just to give a little dialogue with an additional display style. Okay. The search menu is access to the collection of databases that Spartan can access. That was very vague. We can access our own Spartan Spectra and Properties database, and then there are a number of external databases that we connect to. One of those is the Cambridge Structural Database, which is an excellent resource. It's available by license from the CCDC in the UK. Highly recommended. It's kind of the world's repository for small molecule X-ray crystal structures. In any event, access to that is driven from the search menu, and you can search the databases by the specific molecule that you've drawn. You can search it by name or formula or a number of sort of standard ways, and then also by structure queries. So you can draw a molecule, open up a valence, and then or multiple valences, and then search. You can also search an internal transition state library collection with a reaction query. So you can basically define a reaction and then ask the database, hey, have you seen this reaction or reactions similar to this? Okay, and again, the actual databases are available as well, searching via the database dialog. Okay, that's all from the search menu. The experimental data menu is fairly new, available originally in Spartan 20, and this is where you will include, if you've got experimental shift data for proton or 13C spectra, if you have any coupling data as well. Okay, and there's an internal spreadsheet to input that data, and you can also use CSV file or drag and drop. We can format text file to include experimental data. If you have a little table, we can import that as well. Okay, so that covers most of the entries in the toolbar as far as the menus are concerned. And again, we covered the options, activities, and the help menu in tutorial 0. And we will begin that tutorials proper now with walking through Spartan, which is tutorial 2, and I'll point to that. Let's go to the activities menu, tutorials, and let's go to the second tutorial, which is walking through Spartan. All right, and we'll pick things up here next.